There we go. All right, so in the Middle Ages, a glass furnace was stoked with charcoal. Charcoal is not an automatic thing to find out in the forest. To make charcoal, you have to chop a lot of wood and then you stack it up and then you cover it with a dome of clay. It has to be pretty much airtight. You leave a little bit of a gap at the top and a little bit of a gap at the side. You reach in the side and you set the whole thing on fire. And when you're pretty sure it's burning really, really well, then you cap it with more clay and you seal it. So you're sealing out the oxygen, and the heat of your initial fire will chase out all the ethanes and other volatiles from the wood and eventually reduce it down to just pure carbon. And that stuff burns hot. And so in the Middle Ages, a well-appointed glass furnace, you would go through 1 acre of forest per day. Of course, then you'd have to prepare it to make it charcoal. Nowadays, they use propane, and it's a blast furnace. That thing is hot. And they would open up this door. You can actually see the thickness, the depth of this door, and it would just radiate heat at you, all right? And it's hot glass in there, 2200 degrees, 2100 Fahrenheit with it fluxed. It's lava. It's hot lava, and they're sticking this tube in there. That's their blow tube, and they will get a whole gob of hot glass on top of that, and they can blow that into a mold. They can blow a larger globe-shaped sphere out of it, make that into bottles, etc. Right. To my next slide here. This is the poor devil working this. It was easily 110 degrees inside of his studio there, right? And they had a garage door open on the back, but they've got a 2100 degrees furnace going. What is this stuff? This is fiberglass insulation. You can't just set this stuff down because it's soft. If you set it down on something that wicks away heat too quickly, then it'll shatter. So there's all sorts of esoterica involved in the glass making process. Here, the dude has put the end of his blow tube in there. Again, this is heavy steel, else that would melt as well. And he's got this gob of molten glass there. This is like sticking it into lava, all right? And it's glowing, and it's a honey-like consistency, all right? And he transports that bad boy across the room. If you let it fall, it either splashes on the ground and burns you, or it shatters on the ground, and those little splinters not only burn you, but enter your skin, okay? And this is what he was making, all right? He forced it into a mold, blew a little bit of air into it. He was making a pumpkin, right? This is still molten. That's not just the color of the glass. And then he needed to make a top for it, right? So he stuck his gob into some colored glass, got some colored glass on the outside. You can't see that colored glass for now, all right? You can see there what color it was supposed to be. It was going to turn green. So this is probably iron glass. And then he sticks it to the top there, and then he uses this propane torch to shape it. And this whole thing is happening in the space of 1 minute, all right? This is a different one. Down on the bottom, he's got copper glass. I forget what it was sticking on top there, but it was still molten, right? This is it. This is gold glass, you guys. This is ruby glass. And they just had this sitting by the side there, and I was hoping that maybe he would tell us more about it. And this is what that looks like in transmitted light. You don't have to just put the noble metals in, like copper and gold and iron and things like that in. You can put some exotic things in as well. This is, for the most part, uranium glass. Uranium, some rubidium, some other rare earths. all right? And this stuff fluoresces. And so if you had ultraviolet light of some sort, you can get this stuff to fluoresce. In Prohibition times, uranium glass was a big thing. And in 1940, was it 44 or 45, we exploded the first nuclear bomb out in the desert, and it flash melted the upper couple inches of the desert and injected bits of uranium into the sand. And so you can actually get some of this stuff. I've got some of this stuff in my office. It's called trinitite, and it is uranium glass from underneath a nuclear explosion, which is pretty cool. There are actually two kinds of trinitite. I've got just the basic uranium, nuclear uranium atomic glass, but you can also occasionally find this deep blue glass. That's from the copper wiring that they used to wire the first atomic bomb, and other colors like that too, because they had this up on a tower, and the metal of the tower also flash vaporized and injected the metals into the glass, which is pretty cool. So anyway, I was thinking about you guys this weekend as we toured Sunspot Studios. I love that name, Sunspot. It felt like the surface of the sun because it was so hot in there with that furnace going the whole time. I was going to move straight ahead to Philip I. I need to tell you, I was thinking of a whole lot of different things. I wanted to talk about two different kinds of policy. I'm going to skip some of this stuff. This is the important part of this slide. All right. How does a Capetian king afford to do the stuff that he does? Well, he does it using any means possible. All right. He would sell off church seats. That's, of course, exceedingly frowned upon by the church, and the church was not pleased with this. But I just know that that's an option too. All right. As I was working, though, I kept running across this little refrain, and you're going to start getting used to that refrain. All right. When we're talking about rebellion and when we're talking about making allies, the Capetians have an interesting refrain, and it's worthwhile that you know it. So this first dude, he's named Hugh. You know why? The word Hugh is a Gothic word that means mind or spirit. So everybody's named Hugh, and successful people are named Hugh. And so a lot of young wannabes are also named Hugh. Hugh du Puiset, Hugues du Puiset. And Puiset is the name of a formerly Capetian fortress that Hugh took over and raised his finger to the Capetian kings. This again is emblematic of something that involves that feudalist pyramid scheme. All right, high feudalism has a single king on the top, a small number of very powerful lords in the next level down who owe him tribute and whom he owes protection. And then beneath them, you have a similar structure. Those individual lords then have a large number of domains, each one holding a lord, each one having their own domains that have a local lord, eventually reaching down to the 7 to 10 million great unwashed like you and me. And power goes up that pyramid, and protection goes down that pyramid. Tribute and protection. All right. But this pyramid has different geometries. And when the king is weak, that pyramid is really shallow. And so the king is not all that much more powerful than the lords beneath him. And in that sort of situation, you'll have stuff like INQ270, who takes over a Capetian fortress and says, I'm king now. This should seem familiar. He's taking advantage of Philip's young age, and he takes castle. This is what happens to Capetian kings when they're weak, when they're young. It never ends well for the rebels, but I want to show you how he deals with this, how Philip deals with this. Right? This is what remains of the castle. It's obviously mostly torn down, but this is one of these things. It's a castle on top of a man-made hill. What do you call this, you guys?
Norman.
It's a Norman-style castle. Good. And the two parts of it, you're exactly right. The middle part versus the outer part. Big chunk of built-up hillside.
Motte and Bailey.
Motte and Bailey. I don't know who said that, but you're absolutely right. Well done. Well done. All right, so this is a classic Motte and Bailey. You can actually see the man-made hillside that they built on top of. Originally, of course, it would have been a wooden fortress. And then as time goes on, you consolidate that. Nicely done. All right. Here's where the refrain starts. Philip can't win in battle. When I say that, you need to think in the Capetian world, but then again, he doesn't have to. See, overt physical combat implies aggression, right? We know aggression and submission, right? In order to take an aggressive role, you have to be certain of winning. You have to have all the resources you need for victory. For submission to work, well, actually, submission never works, right? What's the third option then?
Maneuver.
Maneuver. Good. And if I could give my students one thing in my classes, it would be that you always have some options, because the rest of the world thinks it's only aggression and submission. Now you know you can maneuver. And what does it take to maneuver? You have to know something about the landscape, you have to know something about your enemy, and you have to know your own capabilities, right? What does this particular maneuver look like? Look at that. He gets the Bishop Eve to throw Hugh in prison, all right? Eve is the Bishop of Chartres. What is Chartres? That is the home planet for the Capetian kings. Does this sound familiar at all? Remember, Hugh Capet got mightily spanked by the next door neighbor, but he was good at standing next to people in power. He was good at standing next to tall trees, wasn't he? Right? In this case, Eve, that's how you pronounce that name, is a tall tree. How do you become the Bishop of Chartres? Well, guess who names the Bishop of Chartres? The Capetian king. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. All right, just to point this out here. So Chartres is right over here. Paris is up here. I've noted Notre Dame as the center. Chartres is directly to the southwest. Le Puisé is south-southwest. It's actually closer to Chartres than it is to Paris. Hugh de Puisé should have been looking out of his peripheral vision. Now, of course, this is a pretty literal view of the landscape, but it's worthwhile saying some things about this here. I want to tell you a little bit about me. I want to see all of you here. Hold on, let me bring up your view here so I can get all of you onto my screen. I want to tell you about one of my favorite pieces of scholarship of all time. Um, who knows what a Neanderthal is?
Primitive human.
That's right. It's an early human. All right, and although they're not direct ancestors of modern humans, usually European or Asian uh, uh, folk have somewhere between 1% and 4% Neanderthal genetics in them, which is pretty interesting. But they're not direct ancestors. But they're super successful. All right. They survived for somewhere around 2 million years. All right, so they're more successful than modern humans so far. There are a finite number of Neanderthal skeletons available to researchers, which is actually pretty cool because you can know every single Neanderthal in existence. I forget the exact number, somewhere around 125 Neanderthal skeletons. And all of them, every single one has some ridiculous injury, like a broken femur, or a broken collarbone, or a dislocated jaw, or a broken skull. All right? Serious, serious injuries. Every single one of those skeletons has a healed injury like that. First of all, it tells you that they had some sort of culture. They had a civilization that that took care of injured members, right? Which is pretty cool. But this particular researcher, whose name escapes me right now, decided to try to figure out why everybody systematically is injured. And so since you only have 125 of these skeletons running around, they did a cluster analysis of those injuries. Try to figure out if there's a modern demographic that has similar injuries in similar locations and similar prevalence. Now let's just put a pin in that for right now, because what happens next is you need to know a little bit about Neanderthal weaponry. Everyone thinks, okay, they had spears. Indeed, they had spears, but they were not projectile weapons. A Neanderthal spear was hafted on a great big old piece of lumber that's about as maybe 3 inches around. It's not for throwing. It's for thrusting, or more to the point, it's for sticking one end into the ground and jabbing that way. Now, we also know what Neanderthals ate. In addition to the standard nuts and berries and things like that, they're eating mammoth. They're eating mastodon. They're eating muskox. There's something called an auroch, which went extinct fairly recently, but it's this really mean-spirited, gigantic elk, all right, like double the size of a moose, right? Now let's think about this for a second. Aggression, submission, maneuver. Aggression. I'm going to go and beat up that auroch. I know it's 3 times bigger than I am, right? You're going to die. It's going to gore you with its horns. It's going to trample you with its hooves, and you're done, right? Aggression will not work. Submission, you go hungry. You can't just say, I'm going to sit back and wait for that auroch to fall down dead in front of me. Now, let's go back to that cluster analysis of those injuries that all those Neanderthals systematically suffered. They made a hit. They did this cluster analysis and figured out what modern demographic looked like that. You're not going to be able to guess this one, so I'm just going to say it. Rodeo clowns. Now, how on earth are Neanderthals similar to rodeo clowns?
because they
rodeo
have to
clowns,
evade.
do they mess with horses and stuff?
Say again one more time for me.
They mess around with horses, but they're in a big group, so that kind of means that they hunted in packs.
They hunted in packs. Outstanding. I don't know who said that, but you're absolutely right.
Brandon.
All right. They hunted in packs. And what do rodeo clowns really do? Like the
They
They
distract.
keep the ball away from the fallen cowboy.
That's right. That's right. It's a distraction. One or several would distract this gigantic prehistoric elk, and the others come in from the side, stick their spears into the ground, and jab them into that critter. Now, again, I was saying we don't have direct ancestry with the Neanderthals, but we have some ancestry, and it might have been a cultural ancestry that maybe has rubbed off a little bit on us, right? While the muskox or the auroch or the mammoth is looking at you, they come from the side. Now, when I show you this map again, I sort of imagine that Hugh de Prizet was looking in this direction. This is, of course, an image that I'm using. He was probably not expecting to be grabbed by the Bishop of Chartres. All right. Look at that. Yves is the Bishop of Chartres, and he probably owes Philip I a couple favors. And the stronger Philip is, the stronger Yves becomes. Right. Let's look to the outside a little bit. And again, you're going to hear this very same refrain coming back. We're not going to spend a lot of time with this, and then I'm going to send you guys off on kind of a fun assignment, all right, because it's a nice day. All right, on the outside of France, which everything is on the outside of France because France is so tiny, right? There is a fellow named Robert the Frisian. As you've noticed, everybody's named Robert because that means the ruler at home. Everybody's named Hugh. You're getting the point there, right? Robert the Frisian wants Flanders. Philip can't beat Robert the Frisian in battle, of course. What's the rest of the refrain? But then again, he doesn't have to. And a good Capetian doesn't have to go straight ahead at his enemies, okay? So he supports Robert's rivals, and they don't exactly win either. But in the end, Robert, he's eventually going to get Flanders. Out of the very complicated deal, Philip ends up with a wife. I'll show you her picture in a moment. And he also gets a peace treaty. Has he beaten Robert? No. Has he got peace with Robert? Yep. And when you look at the map, you're going to realize that this is a pretty big deal. All right, so Paris is right there in the center of your screen. The Capetians have all these tiny little bits and pieces of land. By the way, remember that Robert II the Pious, the second Capetian king, this is his port, his important port that he got through marriage. Right? And then Flanders is right up here. Right? That turns into a buffer zone. Philip gets his wife, he gets a treaty, and he gets a buffer. He gets a little bit of safety on that side, which is pretty cool. Now let's talk about that thing. This is the auroch. This is the mastodon. This is the musk ox. Normandy is a powerhouse. Remember, it's in the second quarter of the 11th century that William the Conqueror is throwing his elbows around. He runs all of Normandy. He threatens Brittany and Anjou, and eventually, of course, will go and threaten England. Right? During Philip's time, if you were to guess who was going to win it all, it was gonna be William the Conqueror. All right. At the time, he's called the Duke of Normandy. And this is what he looks like. This is one of the first images we've got. You can barely see this here. I'm going to just zoom out just a little bit so you can see. Look at this. Oops. Sorry about that. I'm sorry. Computer's losing its mind. Look at that. Look at that. What kind of chair is he sitting in, guys?
He's sitting in the king's chair, right?
It sure looks like a curule chair. It looks like the throne of the kings of France. Why on earth is William sitting in the throne of kings? Well, this is the Bayeux Tapestry. The Bayeux Tapestry tells the story of William the Conqueror taking England and becoming the legitimate king of England. This is a foreshadowing. This is showing that William is king material. All right. Anyway, of course, William can't beat him in battle. He's a superpower. William is the single superpower of the time. What's the rest of my sentence, though?
Philip doesn't have to beat him.
That's right. He can't do it in battle. He doesn't have to. So he brings to light this fellow named Simon de Vexin, who was raised in William's court. Okay. Now, when you see this name Vexin, I sure wish you'd put that in your notes, because this is the name of a region that forms a buffer between Normandy and France. The Vexin is going to be a constant in the Capetian experience. All right. Simon is extremely interested in pilgrimage and crusade, and he's been a jerk the whole time, harassing Philip. All right. He looks into the holy orders because he's interested in pilgrimage and crusade. He looks into them, and Philip says, oh, look at that. He wants to be a monk. Monks have a vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience. What's he doing holding land? This is extraordinarily gutsy. Philip's nerve is complete here, isn't it? He takes him to court. All right. This again should sound familiar. Robert the Pious got a lot of land by marrying someone or threatening to marry someone. Then when it fell through one way or another, he would then take them to court. And a legal battle would eventually turn into a military battle, or he'd end up with a treaty. Right? All right. So what have we really done here? Here's the Vexin. It's a little hard to see in this image here because of the colors. The Vexin is this spot right here. What has Philip built for himself? He's built himself a buffer against this powerhouse. He's built himself a second buffer against this powerhouse. And then he starts looking outside of that. He looks at Brittany. Brittany is a very powerful duchy. It's a dukedom. It's eventually going to fall under the control of the Dukes of Normandy, but for right now, it's just another powerhouse. It's another superpower. All right. Same refrain. Of course, he'll never be able to take it in battle, but then again, he doesn't have to. But you're not ready for how he does this, because he can call in a favor from his new ally, Robert the Frisian of Flanders, who zooms around with his navy and starts beating up on Brittany for you. Now, how many armies has Philip actually mobilized? Well, of his own, 0. But he had his lawyers go after this dude. He did a lot of diplomacy to go after this dude. And that dude, seemingly out of the goodness of his heart, goes after these folks over here. This is a pretty cool little ecosystem that the Capetians have built. They are not mobilizing armies, but they're getting peace treaties galore and buffer zones galore. And they're apparently able to get other people to do their business for them. This is sort of fun, you guys. All right, here's Bertha. That's his wife there. As always, you got to look at the finery. Philip is wearing his Capetian outfit here and the crown, and he's got a good old scepter and everything. Everybody is sitting in thrones, which is nice. Good old royal thrones. All right, and here's Bertha again. And then the death of Philip. This is interesting. What happens next? I'm not sure that anyone caught it the other day, but when we were talking about Clovis, we also set up the royal mausoleum, which I'll talk to you guys about. But I said everybody but 3 French kings in history ended up in the royal mausoleum. Philip is one of them who did not end up there. He ended up here, Saint Benedict-sur-Loire, Saint-Benoît-sur-Loire. I do sort of hope that you guys take down this name. ST for Saint, Benoit, B-E-N-O-I-T. S-U-R means on, Loire. Loire is like the Loire River. Get onto Instagram, because this place is so nicely represented on Instagram, and you can see all sorts of wonderful pictures of where they stuck Philip I of France.
Hey, Professor.
Yes, let me see who's talking here.
It's Hunter.
All right, yes, Hunter.
Can you put that in the chat, the name?
Good idea.
I got like ST, and then after all that, I was like, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's bad. Okay. I'm happy to do that. Hold on. Just gonna grab that out of my screen.
Well, that's good too. I can see that.
Cool. I'll stick in the chat too, and you can do what you need to with it.
It's Philip who ends up there, right?
I didn't hear what you said.
You said Philip ends up in Saint.
Yep. And you can say Saint Benedict-sur-Loire or Saint Benoît-sur-Loire. Did that end up visible to you on the chat?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, yeah. Get onto Instagram and look at all of these sites, by the way. Every single one of them. Does not matter how obscure this is. This stuff shows up on Instagram because people are there. These are real places, and ordinary human beings actually still live there and visit there, right? This is not a spectacularly ornate church. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous, but you notice how it's pretty stripped down. I'm going to just point out again, you notice this semicircular arch? It is not the shape of like a tank round or a mortar shell, is it? It's just a blunt semicircle. And that tells you it's definitely before 1136. All right, this we would call Romanesque. And we're going to come back to this place a little bit later on in the semester because cool things happen there. Other people are buried there. Okay. And here is his effigy. He's buried downstairs, but this is what he looked like, apparently. All right. Now, look behind there. Are you seeing that really cool flooring? This is really, really neat. All right. That flooring shows up elsewhere. Who else has this flooring? Who's this lady? Nice little old lady.
Elizabeth.
That's Queen Elizabeth II. And where is she?
Either Windsor or Westminster.
This is Westminster. That's right. This is Westminster Abbey. And what happens at Westminster?
Coronations.
Yeah. Yep. This is where kings and queens become kings and queens. And she has a floor just like this. We have a special word for this. It's called, and I'll stick this in the chat too. This is called, typing a Cosmati pavement. A Cosmati pavement. And the Queen's Cosmati pavement gives you a sense of what it's good for. Okay, let me get back to this here. This is what it looks like from straight overhead. And a little bit closer in here. This is where she was standing in that other picture. That's the Earth. View of the Earth in the Middle Ages. And here are the heavens that surround the Earth. You see all the weird connectors with the other heavenly bodies. And it's gorgeous. A Cosmati pavement is a space that demonstrates the king or queen's dominions over Earth and the universe. And this is where cool stuff happens. This is right there in front of the main altar in Westminster. And when she was crowned, they had her new throne set up right over the top of planet Earth in the Cosmati pavement, right? And then before she got the anointing, where they put the holy oil on her forehead and on her chest, before they did that, they moved this canopy over her, because this is the sort of amazing experience that ordinary mortals are not allowed to see. And so they'd move this canopy over her and draw curtains in front of her. And the only person who was evidently allowed to watch her get crowned was the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's actually doing the anointing. Right? Now, Cosmati pavements get moved around. I think that the earlier one is actually Philip's Cosmati pavement in Saint-Benoît-sur-Loire. This is Notre Dame in better days. They don't have a Cosmati pavement because they don't do coronations there. But this idea of a Cosmati pavement is important enough. It's for a public enough spectacle that Notre Dame has this gigantic ceremonial rug. And I have never seen this in person. I've only seen pictures like this. It's apparently just absolutely amazing. And this is what they do with it. Now, it's not a Cosmati pavement, but it's a ceremonial rug. This is when they are installing new priests. Here they are giving their vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So do cool things happen on pavements like this? You bet. You bet. All right. This is short and sweet, but I'm going to give you guys, I want to see your faces here. I'm going to give you guys an assignment. All right. I've thought about this, and I hope you guys will forgive me for doing this to you guys. I want you guys to have watch parties. All right. If your last name is A through M, you're going to watch the coronation of Elizabeth II. And I've got the link to that, and I'll send that out. Do it as a watch party. When things get boring or nothing's happening, or the announcer is just droning on and on, you can go right past it. All right. The original video, I think, is an hour and a half. It should take you 45 minutes to watch it. If your last name is N through Z, I'm going to give you a different link. And this is the coronation or inaugural Mass of Pope Francis. And your job is to report back on Thursday just what does it take to make a king or queen in England? What sort of machinery, what sort of special moves and objects and actions, right? Same thing goes though for popes. My suspicion is that both English kings and Catholic popes are actually using the Capetian rite of the Sacre. And I don't know that for a fact, but you guys get to report back. All right, so A through M gets the Queen of England. N through Z gets the Pope, and I'll send those. Actually, why don't I just stick them right into the chat here? All right, hold on a sec. You are not, for any reason, required to listen to the homilies and the speeches and stuff like that. There we go. That part's not important to our work here. Our work is to try to imagine how the Capetian kings did what they did. All right. In a few minutes, I'll also send out the roster of the class so that you can email one another and have your little watch parties. Okay. Use this also as a chance to get to know each other. It's this whole Zoom thing is a little bit grotesque. This is the first semester in my whole career where I really don't know you guys. All right. That sense of community is really important to me. And I'm guessing that it's also important to you. Since we can't all just go and meet at Mill Mountain and raise our mugs together, maybe we can do some other things. All right. So I'll send out the rosters so you can organize yourselves. Watch the coronations and report back on Thursday what you find. Let me see your faces again, and then I'm going to release you.
Do we need to watch it all like as a big group or just like little groups?
Oh, you can do it as you want. All right. I just thought it'd be more fun to have a watch party rather than sitting alone and watching that stuff. Right. I have no philosophy of teaching except for the following. I will never ask my students to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Right. And so if it were me, I'd want to do a watch party, and I'd want to have adult beverages, right? And a large quantity of chocolate or croissants or some other yummy thing. All right, that's what I would do if it were me. Cool? But do it as you need. Other questions? Are you guys okay? Give me a thumbs up if you're okay. All right, I'm seeing a couple of them. All right, thank you. Go and photosynthesize a little bit. It's a beautiful day out there. It's starting to warm up. You've got your assignment. I'll send out the roster again in just a few minutes. All right. It's nice to see you guys. And I will see you on Thursday. Report back to how you make kings and popes. All right. I'm going to stop this share, and I am going to release you all. Nice to see you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. My pleasure.